Hello YouTube. So this is the one that many of you have been asking about and waiting for, the jump shot. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of the jump shot. We're not going to be talking, we'll be talking about how to execute a jump shot. We'll be talking about how to aim a jump shot. We'll be talking about the characteristics of different cues with a jump shot. And we'll be talking about the concept, of course. What we will not be doing is we will not be doing jump shots with English. That we'll do in a separate video. This video, I have a feeling, is going to be pretty long to begin with, but I think you're going to enjoy it because we are going to do a lot of jump shots. So let's talk about the parts of a jump shot. So if this is the table, you've got your cue ball. You have an obstacle ball, let's call it the interfering ball, okay, just for the sake of labeling it and not getting you confused with the object ball. Okay, so how does a jump shot work at its very core? Well, the way that it works is you elevate your cue, and when you strike the cue ball, it pinches against the slate. Now, unlike the rails, the slate doesn't give. So the only give you have is the carpet that's on top of the slate. Okay, so your Simona's cloth or whatever cloth you have on their championship or whatever is the only give in the shot. However, the cloth does give, which creates a small ridge. So your cloth, if we were to blow that up and make our cue ball a giant cue ball, when you shoot, the cloth gives a slight bit, which creates a ridge on the front that acts as a ramp for the cue ball to get over. Okay, so we're going to talk about it a little, but that concept cost me my final pro match, or it probably did, which was against Earl. It was the last shot. At the time, it was 9-9. He played me safe. He left me with about a 3-inch gap between the cue ball and the interfering ball. This was about 3 inches. And when I shot it, we were playing on granito cloth, which was very fast. It was very slick. The cue ball was sliding everywhere. If you hit the rail with top English, the cue ball would hit the rail, come out, and then spin violently forward on the cloth. You could see it spinning as it was coming off. And I didn't take that into account. And as a result, I clipped the top of the interfering ball. The cue ball and the interfering ball both went off the table. Earl went on to finish out that rack and then ran the final rack to win 11-9. This is important. If you're on a cloth that's very slick, you may not get this little ramp effect. And that's because the cloth is thinner. Now, Simona's 860, which most of us are playing on in championship cloth, the Simona's 860 is easier to jump on than the championship cloth because the championship cloth is a little bit thinner. 860 HR is a little bit thicker than 860 for the durability, and so it jumps a little bit better than 860 does because of this very, very slight indent and that ramp that gets formed. Okay, so how is a perfect jump shot executed? A perfect jump shot is executed by the cue ball barely clearing, and this is going to be a parabola, barely clearing the object ball and having enough time to bounce, because it's going to bounce at least once and then make contact with the object ball at a time when it's flat on the slate. That's how a perfect jump shot works. So how do we get to a perfect jump shot? Well, we get to a perfect jump shot. You see this angle here off the slate, this angle? If our cue is at that same angle, whatever angle our cue is at, is the angle the cue ball is going to leave, okay? So if we were to hit this with an infinite amount of strength, it would go that way. However, we don't have an infinite amount of strength, right? And we don't want it to go forever. What we want it to do is get up just high enough to get over our interfering ball and then come down on the other side. Okay, now sometimes in order to get this bounce to happen, you have to hit the ball a little bit higher. You have to hit the ball a little bit higher and have it arc over like this, okay? So it actually starts coming down, but you've gone well past the interfering ball to give it time to bounce. So this, and we're going to call this the landing zone. We're going to call this the takeoff zone. And we're going to call this the apex, because that's the general area that we want the cue ball to go. This is the angle of the cue. And if you remember, I did a video on perspective a few days ago. The perspective is a plane 90 degrees perpendicular to the cue. It's perpendicular to the cue. Perpendicular means 90 degrees to the cue. Okay, so those are the important parts of we'll call that the bounce. The bounce nearly always happens. Okay, there's almost inevitably a single bounce. Okay, so these are the basics of how a jump shot is executed. Let's talk about the mistakes that people make on the jump shot. Mistake number one, all the time, hit too hard. We don't have to go 10 feet above that ball in most cases, and I'll talk about that case. What we have to do, and what we should be trying to do, is to clear that ball. That's it. We do not have to be 10 feet high. We have to be over the ball. Okay? And if you hit it too hard, it goes very high and it bounces multiple times. And what happens if after the bounce, on one of these bounces, it makes contact with the object ball here? Well, what's the tangent line for that on the vertical plane? It's up and away. That's how you get the cue ball off the table. Number two, jumping into a rail. That's mistake number two, jumping into a rail. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that if the object ball is is somewhat near a rail, and the cue ball is at an angle where your jump shot is going to take you into the rail after the hit, then you're going to go off the table. It's very hard to keep that on the table. So jumping into a rail is mistake number two. Mistake number three is I'm not going to call it unintended English because the unintended English has a different cause underneath, which is wrong tool for the job. Okay? And these are true for everybody. They're true. These are the most common problems with a jump shot. These two are what cause pros to miss their jump shots. That's why pros have a difficult time with certain shots, with certain jump shots. I mean, I should put another black mark on my finger like yesterday. Okay, so let's talk about, so jumping into a rail is kind of self-explanatory. Hitting it too hard, we'll talk about that when we actually start executing shots. Let's talk about wrong tool for the job first. Okay. All right, so what I've got here is I have a whole series of cues here, okay? And I want to talk about the characteristics of each one of these tools. And along the way, we're also going to talk about the mechanical action of jumping, your stroke, how you stroke the ball. Okay, so this is my playing cue. This is a natural wood shaft with a G2 tip, okay? The natural wood shaft helps us to jump, but the G2 tip is so soft that we have issues with the amount of force needed to clear a ball. Now, I can jump with every one of these cues, including this one, and we will be doing it. But I want to talk about the characteristics first. And I'll probably go ahead and do some jumps and splice those in so you can see that it can be done. So the playing cue, I can make the same jumps with every one of these cues. The difference is how hard I have to hit it. And with my playing cue, I have to hit it really hard because the G2 is a layered tip. It's soft. Ouch. It's a soft tip. And so when you're hitting into the slate, you're losing some of your momentum to the hit. Some of your momentum is transferring into the slate, which of course doesn't move because there's not enough energy to actually move the slate. Well, the G2 tip is going to compress, which means that for the same jump I have to hit it a lot harder because I have to compress this enough to make up for the energy I'm losing to it. Okay? So this is the traditional first jump shot that's in like Burns' Basic Book of Pool. And this is the one that almost all of us started with when we were doing full cue jumps. Because it's fairly easy to pull off. You still have to hit it fairly firm because of the layered tip. Now we didn't have layered tips back then. We were using LaPro and Buffalo and a few of those. This, even with layered tip, you can still make this. So traditionally, a playing cue jump was something like this. The 3 and the 6 are interfering balls, but I've only got the edge of them, so I really actually only need to get about that high to get over them. Okay, so that's a fairly easy angle to get to. Let's just go ahead and okay. That's this playing cue. I'm looking at the table, right? That's a very horrible table. But let's say my 1 ball is here, my 2 ball is here, and my cue ball is here, okay? Well, if that 2 ball was not there, right? Let's say the 2 ball's not there. If I'm shooting the one in this corner pocket, I have a contact point right here. Yes? Goes right through into the pocket, through the center of the one to the pocket, gives me a contact point right here. That does not change with a jump shot. you're still shooting to make contact with the one ball at that same contact point that you would be shooting at if there was no interfering ball. So now we have an interfering ball. What does that mean? That means that the left and right of the cue, how I point the cue, is I'm going to point it directly at my contact point, just like I always do. That's not going to change. You aim it just like that 2 wasn't there. And in fact, if you watch, you will see pros and others that do this. They've got their shot. They're going to be using their jump cue because they always use their jump cue. And you'll see them aim at the shot like they're trying to make it, and then they'll elevate to make the shot. Now I'm going to tell you, that's not necessary. Okay? That is not necessary. If you do your pre-shot routine, just like you always do, with any other shot, the only difference in the jump shot is that you're going to elevate the cue. Okay? So if I get lined up on my shot back here, and I step into my shot, now you know from watching me, I don't do this kind of pre-shot routine, but for most people this is the way they do it. They get back here, they line up the shot, then they step into the shot. You can just go straight to the shot. You don't have to do that whole aiming routine. It doesn't matter how far that jump shot is, it's still the same. Okay, you've already done, with a regular shot, you've already done your aiming by the time you're stepping into it, right? So I stand back here, I find my shot, I step into it, and I jump and it goes in. Okay, now obviously I don't have an intervening ball, but I wanted to explain that concept. Doing this that you don't normally do and then raising doesn't help. As a matter of fact, it gives you more opportunity to screw up the jump shot. So when you're aiming your jump shot, do your normal pre-shot routine, step into it, just raise straight up. Don't do this, just straight up, and jump and make the shot, okay? We good with that? Stop screwing up your jump shots by overthinking them. You don't need to do that. Okay, so when we make contact with this, for purposes of today, for the basic jump shot, you're going to hit the center of the cue ball. Okay, so here's my training ball. If you remember, the red line represents the red line on the training ball represents that 90-degree angle. That is the perspective, okay? And for purposes of today, we will be hitting everything center ball. Okay? Start with center ball. Center ball is easier than anything else. You have to adjust for other types of English, and actually there are 2 different ways of stroking depending on whether it's top or bottom, and we'll go through those when we talk about English. But for purposes of getting the shot down and being able to make a jump shot consistently, use center ball for the moment. It's better to make the ball and still be at the table, even if you have to struggle to get your next shot, or if you leave yourself a tough shot. It's better to shoot a tough shot than to put your opponent on the table with ball in hand, right? So let's start with center ball and let's get consistent at making those jump shots first. All right, so this is my katana. This is a low deflection shaft. It has a Mori medium tip on it. Similar to my playing cue, I have to hit fairly firm with this. And by the way, these are in the order of easiest or hardest to jump with to easiest to jump with. With the Mori medium tip, that's again a layered tip. Same thing applies where you have to put more energy into it. But you also have an effect on English. And we're, like I said, we're not doing English today, but just know that it is harder to put English on a jump shot with a low deflection shaft than it is with a natural wood shaft. So you'll notice with the two playing cues, I was trying to jump over the edges of the balls. I was not trying to do a full ball jump. All right, so this is one of my house cues. This is a natural wood shaft with a non-layered tip. This is a LaPro medium, I think, or medium hard. This one is easier to jump with than those two because the tip doesn't compress as much as they do. So this is a little bit easier to jump with than my two playing cues. Okay, so we can jump with this one too. We just don't want to try to jump over the top of the ball. If we try to jump over a full ball, we're very likely to hit the top of it. And that's not what we want to do. So up till now, these have been playing cues with normal leather tips. But it's still a full cue jump. Now the Mucci, I recently put a new tip on this. This is a Samsara tip. This is a leather and phenolic hybrid tip. It's a harder tip than the solid leather. It is a solid tip. It is made for break and jump, specifically to meet the requirement for leather content in the tip, because some tournaments, some leagues do not allow fully phenolic tips. So this hybrid allows you to use them. So APA doesn't allow phenolic tips, so Samsara is probably the tip you'll use in that case. This cue is a lot easier to jump with than this one. For two reasons. One, Mucci's have this is an original Mucci, so it has a very flexible shaft, but it's still natural wood. It's just more whippy, if you want to call it that, which helps because now when you're hitting into the jump shot, the shaft can flex and help spring the cue, and the spring, the release of the energy, goes into your jump as well. I used to jump with this cue all the time with a LaPro medium hard on it, back before jump cues got real popular, and in tournaments where jump cues were not allowed. Now I did have a LaPro, not a Samsara tip on it. So I tried about a dozen times to get over with the Samsara, and I couldn't do the full ball jump. So I got easily over the two balls close, but I couldn't do this full ball jump with the Samsara. That's the first time I tried to jump with the Samsara, and I actually expected it to do a lot better than it did. Now this is the sledgehammer. This is a natural wood shaft. It's a thicker shaft. It has a thicker pin, and it has a true phenolic tip. The phenolic tip is the key to this. This cue will jump just as well as this one will. And this, okay, so now this is the phenolic tip. Full cue jump. Nothing to it. Now I want to talk real quick about how I was aiming there with the full cues. So this long table jump, I can't keep my eyes on that one ball when I'm shooting it. So, and especially with these glasses, I've got the wrong glasses on, and I haven't bothered to go change them. What I'm doing on this is I'm doing what I call reference aiming. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm looking down my shot, I'm seeing where to hit where to hit the 1, and then I'm looking back up and seeing where I will hit the 3 ball. If I was to shoot this straight at the 1, where would I hit the 3? Okay, and I'd hit it right about here. So what I'm doing is when I'm getting up, I can't see the 1. It's actually behind the rim of the glasses. What I'm looking at is my point on the 3, which allows me to stay in my natural jump stance and make the ball. Okay, so I'm actually my eyes are fixed here, not at the 1, because it's too far away. And in fact, I very rarely look at the object ball when I'm jumping, even when it's a close jump. Okay, so those are the full cue jumps. This is a Predator Air 2. So this is a 3-piece jump cue, specifically made for jumping. It's a natural wood shaft with a phenolic tip, just like this one is. Okay, so the Predator Air 2 is a true jump cue. Now, jump cue, I would not use the jump cue on a long shot like this. And I'll show you the reason why. The jump cue is made specifically to get height fast and to get down fast. Okay, and on a shot like this, while you can make it, okay, you can certainly make them with that, and it's not hard to get over the balls. But what is hard is that sometimes, get over them, but what will happen on a shot like this is that sometimes you'll get over it and you'll be on line, but you put a little tiny bit of inadvertent English on it, and it actually curves away from the shot you're shooting. You see that? It curved away from the shot I was shooting. I missed that shot because I put inadvertent English on it. And these cues are very good at magnifying mistakes in your stroke. Okay? That's why pros practice with these things forever. Getting over a ball is easy, but keeping that inadvertent English off is not. And I find that it's easier to keep that inadvertent English off with a full cue because but you see, the cue ball didn't curve off to the right like the other ones did. And in fact, even if I do put inadvertent English on it with the cue, the same way, I mean, I was deliberately putting that side spin on with the jump cue. Let's look at what happens with the same thing with a full cue. Nothing. I actually had English on that ball. So, to me, a full table jump is better played with your full-size break cue, assuming you have a phenolic tip on it, than with your jump stick. Now, that said, if you have a really close jump and a really small landing area, that's where the jump cue comes in. Now, on the far end of that, you could put a shaft out here and say shaft jumping, but shaft jumping is illegal pretty much in everything. So it's more for trick shots than it is for actual shots. All right, so why do I need this cue? Why don't I just jump everything with this one? Well, I will tell you that I find it easier to jump with a full cue when my stroke is going to be a natural stroke, up and down stroke. See my elbow and my arm are still in their normal positions. There are 3 ways to stroke a jump shot. And which one you're using depends on the amount of elevation you need. So, up to a certain point, you can use your normal stroke, and it will work. And that's actually what I do on longer full table jumps. For that, I use this cue. Now, the second one is when you have to turn your arms sideways to get your elevation. Okay, now if you have to turn your arms sideways to get your elevation, you can use either the full cue, or if it's more comfortable for you, you can use the fully assembled jump cue to do that. And you'll see in most pro tournaments, they use the fully assembled jump cue for that. Now the final one is when you get up, so far it's no longer a natural stroke. Now I'm feeling tension in my shoulder and my upper arm. Now I'm going to switch to a dart grip. In the dart grip, you will typically take the end off of your jump cue and just use the first two pieces. And so you're up here and you're jumping. Now, how do you know how far you have to elevate? Well, the answer to that lies in the takeoff zone. And it's going to be a little different for each person based on their body. I'm short, I have shorter arms, I'm 5'6". I'm Alex Pagulayan height. And so for me, I very quickly get to the sidearm just by virtue of having short arms and being a short guy. So which stroke you're using is going to depend on you. If you're 6'3", you will be able to use your normal stroke for your jump shot at a much higher angle than I can. The key to the strokes is when you feel that tension in your shoulder, it's time to switch to the next grip. So if I'm trying to do it like this and I feel a lot of tension right here, it's going to be right there in my tricep. Then I'm going to switch to the sidearm. And when I get up here and I'm starting to feel that tension again in the tricep, then I'm going to switch to the dart grip, okay? Because you don't want to be stressing the muscle to begin with, because that takes away from your control. Okay, so the angle of your cue should be the angle to take it over the object ball, okay? And what's really going to determine that angle is this distance right here, okay? And that distance comes from where your cue ball is. So when you're thinking about this, just think about how, like, say a basketball or a baseball bounces, right? Not a baseball because it may hit the threads. Think about how a basketball or a volleyball bounces, okay? If it comes in at this angle, it comes out at that angle. Simple geometry, right? Same thing applies here. The difference is that a basketball or a volleyball, the ball flattens. In this case, the carpet flattens, the surface you're hitting flattens. Okay, so let me just erase this here. The keys to a well-executed jump shot is first to be able to visualize that angle. If I hit it at this angle, that angle is what it's going to come off the carpet at. Then I have to hit it hard enough to get it to arc over, okay? And then I have to land it before it hits that ball. Those are the things to think about there. Now let's talk briefly. This jump is better done with a jump cue. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're that close up on it and you need to get quick, need to get up in the air very high, if it's a medium distance takeoff zone, just use your full jump cue, your normal stroke, and put it in. If it's extremely close, a ball, less than a ball, then you go to your dart grip and shoot that shot. It's not that hard. I mean, just go to your dart grip if you're that close. If your ball's distance or closer, you need to be out using your dart grip. So for me, the only times I'm using this cue at all is if I'm within about 3 balls distance of the jump, I'll use this. If it's further back than that, I'll use my full cue on that jump. And by the way, I'm getting ready to violate one of those things people do wrong, which is jumping at the rail. This is what I mean by jumping at the rail. if I jump this and I go too far and I'm bouncing, when I hit this ball I'm going to bounce up, I may make the ball, but have the cue ball go off the table. So I don't like doing jump shots where you're jumping into the rail because you have to land it. That was pretty weak. So this takes a lot more finesse when you've got a shot like this and that rail's in play. You're jumping towards a rail. It takes a lot of finesse because you have to land it. You have to clear, but you have to land it without going off the rail. So unless you're very, very close, I would actually recommend using your brake cue if it has a phenolic tip. If it has that Samsara, I don't know. I wasn't having much luck jumping with that Samsara over a full ball. I don't know about that. Let's give that a try just for the sake of giving it a try. There's too much give in it. Now don't get me wrong, it can be done, but you're going to have to hit it really hard and you're not going to finesse this shot with that hard hit. So those are the characteristics of different types of cues with regards to jumping. That's the basics of jumping and how to aim your jumps. We talked about reference, aim points, and regular, and how you don't do. You will screw yourself up doing this get down and aim and then raise up because you're adding extra motion into your stroke. If you simply stand back, get your aim just like you always do, focus on the contact point or on your reference point, either one, focus on your contact point and just come straight into it, into your jump elevation, then I think you'll find that you're actually more successful at making jump shots than if you get down, aim, and then raise, because when you do that, you are adding extra, when you do that, you're adding extra motion into your pre-shot routine that's not normally there. I think it's more important to stay with your normal pre-shot routine and just realize that when you come, you're going to have to jack up more than normal than it is to aim and deliberately add that extra set of steps in. Now, if you practice that extra set of steps all the time, great, more power to you. Personally, I would rather keep my entire routine consistent. With that, we're going to let you go. We will be back. I will probably do one more key concept that I can do with the rails off. And then it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks before I get my rails back and the table recovered. So we'll see you soon. With that, if you like what you saw, hit like, hit subscribe so that you get notified when I do start sending these back, and ding the notification bell. And we'll see you next time.